It was like our first opportunity to really get to know our son at 15. As a parent, you want to know your kids more than anything. Getting that information was life-changing.
He said, it kept me from perseverating on idiotic things. He has said, it feels so good to have a calm brain, to not be constantly on the edge. Even if he doesn't go any further, how can we be upset? Everything that is going so well for him, he is so much happier on the inside. This is just an incredible outcome. If they start limiting us, my goodness, I pray that it's not going to be like that. Call your congressman and all that. It is shocking how that attitude is taking over. Of course, we couldn't disagree more. It is noticeable, generous, measurable changes with him. I just don't see how it can be denied.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. We have some special guests today. And so welcome, Holly and Matt. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you here. Where are you guys located, if you don't mind?
We are in the great state of Texas.
All right. Good for you. What part? I lived in Texas for, almost 20 years. I really love Texas. I'm excited to get back there later this month, rather, actually. So what part of Texas are you guys in?
We're north of Dallas in a little town called Prosper.
Prosper. Okay. For the closest I've been to Plano. And I got stitched up in the ER in Plano after a rugby tournament. I got popped in the chin and had to get stitched up afterwards. So that's my closest experience to where you guys are. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I guess it's Autism Awareness Month. I guess you guys have some story related to that. So I'll let you guys get into that. But if you don't mind sharing a little bit about yourselves. What do you guys do? What's going on in your life?
Do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I am a full-time homemaker. When we met, I was in a hair salon, cutting hair, still doing the Rachel haircut. And then we had our daughter in 99. And from then on, it had always been our plan for me to be home with the kids. And Matt?
Yeah, I'm an executive for Fortune 50 company and operations.
Yeah, sorry, Matt, you cut out a little bit. I didn't hear you. I heard something about executive at a Fortune something company.
Large company. I'm an executive for a large company.
Okay.
We transferred here in 2018, but we've lived quite a few different places all around the Southeast mostly.
Okay. And where does your story begin? You don't mind, outside of that part, but.
Really, with me, I began to have the typical middle-aged weight issues, not feeling as well. And even though at the time he and I were very active in this gym that did all the HIIT training, like that was and I was still gaining weight and not feeling as good, eating tons of salad, which was supposed to be great. And little by little, I began to see videos on YouTube. And frankly, at first I was very skeptical about keto and carnivore. I thought that sounded like clickbait, to be honest. And somehow I was compelled to watch a video of you and a lot of other presenters, and they kept having a lot of consistent stories and anecdotal evidence from the people that would be guests. And so I decided to start in November of 2021. And I would say I was still pretty keto. I've never measured anything, but I began to have weight loss. I began to feel better. I began to have better sleep, and I transitioned naturally into carnivore. And I have total resolution from decades of eczema. And I would just watch these podcasts along, and it was Dr. Barry has a Q&A, and his wife said very offhanded, I don't even think, in my memory, it was not the point of the question, but she said, for those of you who have children with autism, you ought to check out Dr. Georgia Eid. And then by hook and crook, I found out about Dr. Chris Palmer, and it had never occurred to me to try this for autism. And that's where we decided to give it a try.
Okay, so you have one. I don't know how many children you have, but at least one of your children has autism. Autism, is that correct?
Yeah, we have a 19-year-old son. He's 19 now, and a neurotypical daughter that's 23.
Okay, and It's pretty well described that a lot of autistic kids also have gut issues, and they often have food intolerances or food peculiarities, I guess is a good word to say. In case you don't know, I have an autistic 17-year-old son. So he just turned 17 last week, in fact. And I don't have him full time. He is definitely doing pretty well. And he's not on a fully carnivorous diet, but he has a reasonably decent diet, and he performs pretty well. There's still some of the stereotypical autistic stuff going on. But anyway, that's besides the point. So your daughter was diagnosed at probably a couple of years of age, I'm guessing. I don't know. Or your son, rather, at a young age, I assume. And I guess just maybe describe his sort of struggles or some of the issues that he might have had, and how did you incorporate a diet to him, and how's that been doing?
We were like so many people that we didn't know it was autism that we were seeing. Mm-hmm. Matt noticed really before me, but I would say at the time we just thought it was a speech issue. But sure enough, we went through all the training, and at about 2 years, I think I had 2 years and 8 months, he was diagnosed and began going through all the usual protocols that they want you to do. Speech therapy, Wyatt's nonverbal, very classic autism, not like Asperger's. Speech, occupational therapy, different types of protocol to help him learn and be more regulated. When he was young, he was more compliant, and we could say with confidence that he never had a tantrum, but all that began to change in his teenage years. And we also began to find out that he had ADHD. We knew he had sensory input disorder. He told us, Wyatt communicates with us through a letter board. He types letter by letter. And he told us he has synesthesia and double vision. He had a lot of things going on. And so I had run it by Matt if we would even try this for him. And so I did a presentation for Wyatt to see if he even would be open to this, because I knew I could not force him to do it. This would be a massive change. And if he was not into it, it was not going to be successful.
Yeah.
He ate almost all carbs. Yeah. Spaghetti, Cheerios, chips, pretzels, yes, waffles, whatever. And so he was willing to try. I think he had heard me talk about how well I was feeling. And at the beginning, he had some blueberries. It was more keto for him. Hot dogs, pork.
Bacon.
Yeah, lots of bacon and some meat.
Okay.
And so I have that we started on March 30th, 2022. And he's 5'10". And when we started, he was 187 pounds. And the first thing he did was begin to lose weight. By April 14th, he was down to 152 pounds. But he didn't really have any other improvements. Not that that was great, but that was pretty fast. And that's the wonder of youth. That would happen so quickly. But by the end of May, he was really beginning to make some changes.
Okay. And assuming he had excess body fat, he wasn't losing just lean mass. Because my kid, he's 6'5" and he weighs like 140. He's a beanpole, man. I'm always trying to, whenever I have him, I'm shoving food down his throat. But he doesn't have an interest in weightlifting or anything. I can't get him to do that. But anyways, so it's not been long, only been a year. And his diet was typical of a lot of kids these days. There's a lot of just processed carbohydrate-based foods, and they taste good. Kids love them. They eat them up. And a lot of people say, well, their kids, they can handle it, and their metabolism is so good and on. But honestly, it's probably detrimental to most kids. So you said that by May, he started to make some other changes. So what's going on in May now?
By May, he has written to us that his depression is very much lightened. He said, and it makes me anticipate brighter days in the future. Understand this will take time, but I can be patient. I'm actually happier than I have ever been in all understandable memory. And aptitude for learning is going to new heights.
Wow.
So he types to us.
How does that make you feel when you hear? First of all, it's got to be like, wow, you've been sad for so long. I mean, it's got to be sad, but I hear that he's got some hope.
Yeah, just as another point of reference, we were not able to communicate with him until he was 15. Like the letterboard, we had tried that early on, but it never really took hold. We tried it again at 15 and really had a massive breakthrough. We had no idea level of intelligence that Wyatt has. We were never mean to him, but we would talk pretty openly around him because he couldn't communicate other than just a few words with us. And when the letterboard kind of unlocked him, it was like our first opportunity to really get to know our son at 15. Yeah. And so to hear and to see as he's gone along this journey and him typing it out letter by letter is incredibly powerful. I don't know if I can relay it in terms that anyone that doesn't have a special needs child can probably understand. As a parent, you want to know your kids more than anything. And when you don't have that avenue into even just the most basic things, and often externally, what it looks like he's saying is not at all what he's really feeling or wanting to communicate. And we see that very clearly even today. So getting that information was life-changing. Yeah,
I can imagine. I imagine he's typing out right in front of you, right, basically, or I'm not sure how the letterboard works, but he's putting it out right in front of you. And as you're watching this sentence evolve, it's got to be like, wow, what's he going to say? I can imagine.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah. And he does it letter by letter, and he says each letter he's going through. And you just imagine the patience you would have to have, even for just a conversation. And it takes a lot of effort for him to control his fine motor skills to do that. And he has a very unique way of communicating as someone might that has processed and learned to communicate internally for the first 15 years of your life.
Yeah, gosh, I can imagine. Okay, so now you find out that not only is he feeling better, but he's quite articulate and quite intelligent, and because that's fairly sophisticated language for anyone. But for someone you may have thought, I don't know what he's able to comprehend. I don't know what his level of intelligence is. And so where does he go from there? This is May, so we're now almost a year later, something like that.
Just to step back a second, up until he was 15, we really didn't know either.
Yeah.
When he started to be able to communicate to us, we uncovered not only is he's smart, he has a photographic memory. He hears something once, he remembers it forever. You can read him a story, and he can tell you, like we went through books of the Bible, he can tell you what's the next. You can pick apart any part of the Bible, read something, and he can tell you what the next sentence is. His intelligence is off the charts, but he can't access it and use it and apply it because of all the co-occurrences that ride along with autism. So I always tell folks it's like having access to a Ferrari for a car, but you don't have the keys. You only have the keys for like a minute a day. It's like unless you can apply it, intelligence on its own isn't as valuable.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I don't know the percentage, maybe 10% of autistic folks tend to have some savant abilities, a lot of it. And my son is similar. I remember when I was testing, I just had him because I noticed he was memorizing things very well and he could speak. And I had him, I had a 25 string of numbers, 1, 7, 9, 50, all 25 string. And I had him look at it for like a minute and then he could repeat the whole thing back. 25 digit recall, which is like phenomenal. Most people, we can remember a phone number and not much more. And he had perfect pitch and all these crazy things. And it's the same. He's got all these abilities, but it's hampered by a lot of social things and things like that. But okay, so you discover that he's actually quite bright, and obviously it's got to change the relationship. When you're talking around, you like, what does he actually comprehend and that type of stuff. So it's got to be at least feel good to know that at least. So he's still eating bacon and hot dogs and a few blueberries. And is that still been his diet? Has he progressed? Does he, I guess I'll ask, have you seen continued improvements in other behaviors or features? Then what does his diet do? And how is he I don't know if is he able to prepare his own food, or is he limited where you guys have to do that?
I would say in September, per I've seen a few, but like Michaela and Jordan Peterson's video, I learned about the lion diet where they really eliminated quite a bit. And it was for a lot of mental health issues as well as physical ones. So I had approached Wyatt about trying to what he thought about removing blueberries, and let's just see how it goes. And if there was no difference, we would come right back to it. And so he agreed to do that. And also during that time, Wyatt began to be able to attend church with Matt and me. We used to have a caregiver. That was out of the question for him to go to that. And he began to come. He was able, Matt's dad passed away in October, and he was able to go to the memorial service. And he wrote, "Thank you for allowing me to go. I am able to handle so much more because of this diet change. Allowing me to do this empowers me and shows respect for the change. So thankful for the opportunity."
Wow.
So he's knocking us out. And so this is still pork, beef, and for sure the hot dog, but no fruit. He was already a picky eater. He wasn't a guy who ate a lot of foods anyway, but that's just leaving the fruit out. I feel like he's taking another step and is able to be open to more and experience or absolutely shut off. Our lives were very limited. I don't know.
Limited.
Yeah. It can be exhausting because particularly, are they going to hurt themselves, or there's something bad going to happen? Like if something happens, can they defend themselves? Can they make a phone call? It's for anybody who doesn't have a child with special needs or something like that. It can be exhausting. It really can. And to have some level of relief taken off. Okay, he's quite bright and he's functioning. And the fact that this is interesting to me because you're like, everybody says, well, what's wrong with blueberries? People always tell me, well, your diet would be just as fine if you had some healthy carbs in there. And there's nothing wrong with fruit and nothing wrong with vegetables. And you should just eat that and stop being silly. And I'm like, I literally see every day this similar thing, not always in autism, but in different, whether it's Crohn's disease or something else, where you sometimes just have to remove that stuff, either temporarily or permanently. And it does make a big difference. And so how has his eating, I don't know, like when you're eating carbs, a lot of times you're always hungry and you're always eating. And has he communicated about he likes the food, or does it make him feel a little differently? Does he eat more? Does he eat less? How does that work for him?
In October, because it had gone so markedly, measurably with removing the blueberry, somehow he would feel about removing pork, and he was very reluctant because he ate, at least
a lot of bacon.
A pound of bacon every morning, no sweat. A 19-year-old or 18-year-old can eat massive quantities of food as your son.
Yeah.
And he said that was good. And he said, it makes me a lot better, even though I love it, which he seems to be very sensitive and very tuned in quickly to what affects him for good or for bad. I feel like a much more of a blunt tool in my own life, but he can zero right in. So
to have that level of insight, and that shows a lot of maturity in my view. I realize that I like these a lot, but I'm willing to give this up to improve my quality of life or improve my functioning level, which has got to be a godsend, I think, to anyone, but particularly, and that's just he's starting to open up more doors for him, at least being able to communicate with you guys. You had mentioned early on, and my son, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, just therapy all the time. You're trying to figure it out. How do you pay for it? How do you arrange it? How do you schedule it? It's a full-time job, literally. Is he still involved in any of that stuff? Because I know after a certain age, the state doesn't help you pay for it anymore or something like that. So does he still have any therapists or anything like that? Or are you guys the therapists these days?
The school he is in public school. I have homeschooled off and on through the years, but school provides some. We don't look for him to speak. We think that the letterboard and possibly a device, typing, Prolo, Quotago, or some other AAC might be the way that he goes. And now he's in vision therapy, which has also helped dramatically. So many of the time when we were first having him assessed all those years ago, they would say, does he look when you point? Does he do that? And of course, no. But now I think he probably couldn't. He may have known what we wanted him to do, knowing how bright he is, but I don't think he could make his eyes do that. Body control is a huge part of what Wyatt is trying to conquer.
Can he ambulate independently, or is he? I don't know.
Oh, yes.
So he walks around and stuff like that. He's just a little, maybe uncoordinated a little bit, or no?
I would say his skills are excellent.
Yeah.
And like we used to love to go jumping, and so we'd go to the trampoline park. He could go there and wear me out. I mean, we would be jumping there for a long time. He was very fit, very agile. That kind of coordination was excellent, but fine motor skills, pointing, holding something, anything that required more fine-tuned dexterity was really challenging for him. And with the eye therapy, he's made huge progress. He told us he had double vision. We didn't know that, and when he communicated that, we took him to a specialist now, and he's made huge progress in that regard, which has helped him be able to focus in. And he couldn't get it was muscle control. You couldn't tell. It wasn't like one eye would stray.
But he couldn't look up for a picture.
Yeah. It's like that part of his brain hadn't connected how to perform that function.
Yeah, and I know like my son also struggled with fine motor stuff. He couldn't tie his shoes for I think he was 15 before he could tie his shoes. It was just, and it's still a very slow, labored process, and it's you feel sad because can this person ever be independent or not? And it's one of those things where what about some of the classic features of autism? A lot of people have perseveration. I don't know if he vocalizes, or they'll just get hung up on one thing over and over with repetition. Have you noticed some of these stereotypical behaviors becoming better?
A huge one that, again, Wyatt initiated is stepping back from the computer, which used to be something he could stay with Baby Einstein videos or the Wiggles or things that, again, somebody on the outside looking would think he was a very simple child intellectually. But he began to say to us, autism has me forever remembering my childhood. And when I checked back in, after 90 days with no fruit, or maybe it was the pork, I can't remember. He said it kept me from perseverating on idiotic things. That's the way Wyatt termed it. So now he doesn't use the computer other than academic things.
But YouTube videos and the same old ones and certain segments of them or certain sounds. We had a computer in his room. He's like, I don't need to have that. I don't even want to turn that on. It doesn't lead me to a productive output. Wow. That's incredible. The level of discipline and insight that this guy has. Good kiddo. And it's because he's got, I'm listening to what he's saying, and it's very sophisticated language. So it's not like, you don't get that from watching the Wiggles. It's fruit salads. I remember my kids watched the Wiggles too, and I went to go see them in concert, I remember, at one point. But so where is he learning from? Is he learning from, his schoolwork? Where is he learning all this incredible advanced language and concepts? And does he have any particular interest that seems to be interesting to him? So I'll start it, but he learned how we homeschooled our daughter. And he would be around in the periphery, and he heard, of course, and with a photographic memory, everything he heard, he retains. If he sees a picture of a map, he can remember all the countries, where they're at. And like I said, anything that he learned, everything, I think, secondhand. He taught himself to read. We found this all, because again, he went to school. They had him in very basic programs, and then he had some difficulty where kids were roughhousing him because he was a much more gentle kid and he was in the special needs group. So that's why we pulled him out and homeschooled him. But he taught himself a lot of that through secondhand, through what he heard from his sister being homeschooled. And then now, you want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing?
Now we read every morning. He's told me that he likes biographies. So we are reading, we finished Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, this guy, John G. Payton, who was a missionary to cannibals in the New Hebrides. Like, he likes them to be exciting. Now we're reading about a girl who survived from a plane crash in the Amazon jungle in 1971. We read every day. And in fact, he says for his summer plans, he would like to read more books than ever.
Wow. Interesting. And when you say read, I mean, is he physically able to hold a book, or is it on computer, or how do the books, are you reading it to him, or how does he do that?
I do read to him, but Wyatt can read as fast as we can turn a page. It is like, but he says, even though he can do it, he would prefer it if we did it.
Got it.
So,
And we checked him on that because I didn't believe he could.
No.
I didn't even think the screen was up for us. He would flip through it so fast on the iPad, there's no way you're reading that. And we checked him, and he could come back and any statement. It was. I don't even know how it's possible to process that much information. But I think he prefers to hear Holly read it, and the voice characterization, it helps him. I think it's more calming to do it that way than for him to sit down and to absorb it through his own. I think he feels compelled to just go through it in a blaze.
Wow, that's amazing. It's a speed reader as well. And as far as one of the things I remember, one of the things with autism, when I remember my son doing his early training, it was like identifying emotions. It was like he couldn't tell if someone was happy or sad, or you had to train people how to do that. Whereas for a lot of us, it's innate. You can tell when somebody's crying, they're sad, and somebody's smiling, they're happy. But do you notice any changes in that aspect of it? Does he identify emotions? Is he able to be empathic with other people around him?
So Wyatt has told us that he feels like autism is a spectrum disorder. The folks that struggle with social cues, in his view, that's not his struggle. Like, he understands and can read body language and feel some of those same things. We have a nephew who has Asperger's, and that is exactly his situation. He does not read social cues. It's very awkward for him. He has a hard time because he doesn't pick up on the nonverbal cues that everyone else does. Wyatt gets all of those. He just can't always apply and what you're seeing on the outside isn't necessarily reflective of the way he's feeling. So he certainly, some of that stuff, I would say he's very connected with us and attuned to what's going on in a way that is not typical for those that have Asperger's or some of those other normal troubles with nonverbal cues.
Yeah, you mentioned you said you also have a neurotypical daughter. I can't remember how old she was, but how do they get along, and has this changed their relationship at all?
She's always been an excellent daughter to him. She is very kind. She's patient. Sister. He doesn't have a daughter. Yeah. But not that, of course, they both can get on each other's nerves at times, but she is just compassionate and gentle and always seeking a relationship with him. And they have, through me, Wyatt might text her at school. She's finishing up her senior year. And she texts him and is willing to go with him anywhere. And she's been outstanding.
Another caregiver. She's really been a part of our care team. It's been a different upbringing for her. She said the advantage of not having a typical brother that would maybe the challenges that might go with that. But she's had probably some more responsibility as a third part of our three legs of our stool of caregiving, of working to try to help him have his best life and keeping things functioning in the home when she was before she went off to college.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Wyatt has a lot of insight into his condition. I understands autism, but does he, I want to work on this now. Is he like trying to figure out how to continue to improve his situation?
He's told us he does get to do some electives through the high school, which we do like a lot. And one of them was orchestra. And I started teaching him very beginner piano this past November, because until this diet, I would say his coordination, again, the fine motor, he could not drum his fingers or do individual finger movement like you need for piano. But he says, I love music. It's a highlight whenever he can be a part of that. I don't know. I feel like right now the diet is helping him mostly internally, which is going to continue to open doors for outside interest, for a hobby or for something more that he can do, maybe socially or with personal interests.
Has he ever, since he's started to go this very strict version of the diet, or even before, has he ever strayed? Has he ever, okay, I'm just going to have a piece of pizza, and has there been a consequence to that?
Yes, for sure. We now have a cooler that we have a lock on. At first, because Wyatt was so picky, he'd never eaten, for example, like a tortilla chip, never. But when candy, never had a piece of candy in his life, but he began to give some of those things a try. And I would notice, like, you seem really anxious this morning, or maybe even digestive issues or things like that. And he would tell me what he had done. And he might even say, I tried certain tortilla chips and they are terrible. But he does. And in fact, I would say, hey, are you wanting to introduce more carbs? Because I cannot do this if you're not in it. And he said unequivocally every time, no, I know it's a mistake. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, we have a cooler now where we've locked up some of the most tempting things.
Yes.
Like we had these little dark chocolate pieces. We found out that he had, previous one, that we had a key for it. He knew where the key was, but it was enough of an effort to go get the key, unlock the cooler, get the items. Well, he had been going in there for a while and eating those dark chocolate pieces. And it's the sugar addiction that we all struggle with. And so we now got a combination lock on there just to help him not do that. He knows it's the right thing, but we're just not tempting. Like, we don't have ice cream in the house because I would eat it all. So it's like, better not just to have it here. And so we just keep it so it's not as accessible for him. He knows it's not the right thing. We just don't want to make it tempting and, have it right out there where you can go grab it in a moment of weakness.
Yeah. I'm just wondering because obviously he's on this very quote unquote restrictive diet, the same diet I'm on, basically. I just eat meat all the time. And has that changed like your daughter's diet? You guys, because you said you initially started on this on a ketogenic style diet. Has it changed the entire household's diet?
I'm carnivore now. Occasionally I might have carbs, but very occasionally. The large part of my days are carnivore. And I would say Matt and Katie are also less sugar and carbs than certainly it definitely has. And I would say another thing that Wyatt began to tell me is that he was craving fat. And so I began to put some butter on his meat and he said, that is really good. He said, it makes my brain feel so good, feel so calm. And then again, through more podcasts, I heard that different fats do different things. So I tried beef fat is the most recent thing. And now it's bite for bite. If he has a bite of meat, he has a little cube of brown, crisped up beef fat. And he says, this is the greatest thing ever. It's making me feel so good. So, and he says he needs it. I pack it for his lunch too, and not that it just helps him maintain throughout the day.
This has got to feel as parents watching your child grow and I'm feeling the frustration because they're not able to do things that the other kids can do in many cases. It's got to feel like a huge relief or give you hope that you've got this sort of thing. And I'm just wondering if at any time during the journey, all the therapy, all the visits and provider visits, had anybody ever suggested, hey, maybe you should change the diet or consider that? Has that ever been discussed at all?
Everything from, I saw a chat about heavy metals, we had tested for that.
Oh yeah.
All of the usual, the therapies, we could.
Chelation back in the day, everybody was doing that.
Yeah.
We've looked at a million different things, but I will tell you, I was skeptical. If you just said, hey, you just restrict his diet, all this stuff would have happened. I would have said, I don't see how that's feasible and possible. I would have not believed if I hadn't witnessed this transformation. It doesn't sound, it wouldn't have seemed that it would have this pronounced of an impact, but it's clearly, it's without a doubt. And so I tell folks, I'm like, hey, if you have challenges, it's like before you go to seek some really aggressive treatment or whatever, try diet. I think diet is a huge, way more than it's given credit for, of an impact on how we feel. And certainly with folks on the spectrum, I don't think it's just Wyatt. Now, he may have some unique pieces with his particular situation, but I think it would, without a doubt, it would help other folks if they would try it.
Yeah. I know of many that have done that. There's an entire group on Facebook called the Autistic Carnivores. Again, a friend of mine named Tom Clark runs that, and he's got hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands now, of people, either parents of autistic children or autistic adults that are on the spectrum, whether it's Asperger's or autism. And they clearly, they can tell you, hey, look, I 100% do better when I'm on this diet. And so I'm just wondering, Matt, because you're watching this have this impact on your son. It's like, wow, this is really impressive. Clearly, it's improving his quality of life. And then what do you think when you're like eating stuff and it's like, I'm going to have that carbohydrate or whatever, I don't know what you're eating outside, the chocolate or things like that. Does it ever give you like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be eating this stuff?
Yeah, so it has certainly, while I've done intermittent fasting, I certainly have not gone I'm not fully over on the carnivore side of things, but seeing the impact, and not just with Wyatt, but with Holly as well, it certainly has, that's part of the reason that I've eliminated some of the sugars that I have. I'm not completely carnivore, I'm not completely sugar-free, but I think it'd be really hard for me to argue that there's value other than just I enjoy it and it gives me more flexibility when I'm traveling or through work. And it's more restrictive, the diet, the more restrictive you are, the more challenging it can be. But it'd be hard to argue with the facts, to your point.
You said he's in vision therapy, and I don't know what else he's doing. Obviously, you guys are doing a tremendous amount on your own at home, I'm sure. But some of the people you've brought him to that have, I don't know if they've known him for years, perhaps, and maybe they can tell the changes too. As you guys said, hey, we've changed his diet significantly, and this is the result. Has anybody else been aware of this outside of the immediate family?
Yeah, I was going to say this week I had to go to the annual meeting. I'm sure you know about these things through the school. And last year, which is another impetus for trying it, we were not having a good year. He was getting we were getting calls because of his behavior, outbursts, throwing himself on the floor, crying for no apparent reason, just all over the place. And this year it was night and day. And there's still a million goals that they say he's not doing, but we do not question his intelligence. But they would say he's able to go with the flow more, because invariably, as much as they try to keep a routine in the school system, there's a fire drill, or there's a new student, or there's a pep rally, or just something that can change things. And that used to be not okay for him. And another student said things that would have made him just freak out. He's handling it. He's doing it. He's just able to be open to a lot more, to try it, to even be a part of like orchestra or a floral class or a photography class. He just couldn't have done all of that and be a part, because they're with the neurotypical students during some of those electives. And they said he has peer partners, and sometimes he can do more with them even than the teachers. It was, again, night and day. I mentioned the diet a few times. They did not particularly embrace it. And even when I mentioned, I've switched Wyatt over from a pediatrician to our general practitioner now because he's grown. And when I told her about it, she was like, be sure that he gets enough fiber and be sure. And it's hard if you've heard something for 50 years or however long you've been. As I say, from the very beginning, I thought, I'm so sure vegetables are not good for you. I just had never heard anything like that. It's stories like Wyatt and your friend who runs the Autism Carnivore group and all that are going to change minds, change hearts about this.
It's hard to deny when it's right in front of you, because you live with it 24 hours a day. You see it and you're like, it is unequivocally, objectively better. And you just can't. I don't care how many studies people will show you about the benefits of fiber and all the stuff that we hear about constantly in the media, how, meat is bad for you and a high-fat diet is bad for you and all this stuff. And yet you're like, this is actually literally giving my child a quality of life that he's never had before. It's good for you for trying that, because had you never done it, who knows, his quality of life would have been maybe still never knowing what he's capable of or what he can think about and what those types of things. What about, I'm a huge proponent of exercise, and whenever my kids are out, hey, let's go for a walk. I'm gonna throw a weight vest on you. We're gonna go for a walk. I'm a bully a little bit. Hey man, let's go do, because I know it's good for him. And does he have any? You said he used to like to jump on the trampoline, and obviously, a lot of kids they love just slamming into things. Like the autistic kids, they just like to feel the real heavy pressure and heavy blankets and all this stuff, and they just like that very intense physical stimulation. Has he been able to direct any of that into kind of a, I don't know, even exercise?
He was younger, and we found out later he was compelled to do some of that. It wasn't that he necessarily enjoyed some of the things like the jumping. He would jump for longer than he maybe wanted to, because he had, I'm sure because of the sugar and other things, energy to get out. And he did a lot of exercise, a lot of swimming. He would do things probably more than he wanted to. As he's gotten older, that got less and less. I think because of his anxiety around how he looks, he didn't want to go outside. He didn't want to go to the store. He didn't want to go on a walk because if he would make any kind of vocalizations. And as you get older, people give you less allowance for that. There's these aggressive looks, and he didn't like, and it would make him more anxious, and more people would act like that. And so he was really pretty reclusive. And so now we started to go out and do a few more things as his anxiety has gotten better. We told him he's committed that he's going to be willing to do more, be in the swimming pool more this summer. And then we're also going to try walks at night or like in twilight versus during the heat of the day. He thinks that's a better choice where he would be able to get out there and start doing some things. We tried a few sports with him in the past, throwing the frisbee, tennis, a bunch of things, baseball. I tried a bunch of different things. It was either
low endurance.
Yeah, his stamina for that was very low, even though his agility when he was younger was very high because of all his activity. We had a trampoline in our house and he was out there all the time. But we found out later it wasn't really an enjoyment thing. It was just
Yeah, I'm just wondering because I think exercise probably will be beneficial. And it's kind of like, as you mentioned, like my son, I'm 6'5". He's about the same height as me. He's tall, he's thin, but he's a big person and he looks normal. You look at him, you say, oh, he's a normal looking dude, maybe a little skinny, but then he starts doing the weird kind of crazy autistic stuff. It's kind of like, people are like, whoa, and it can scare people. And, I get that. It's kind of like, and if you're self-aware of that you're making other people around you uncomfortable due to vocalizations or weird behaviors, it's got to be really limiting. And so but his level of insight is quite remarkable, as I'm sure you guys are aware. One of the things, there is interesting because there's some companies out there that employ autistic people because they have these unique abilities, incredible abilities to focus. There's like some software companies where they make them write code because they have no tolerance for errors. They're meticulous, they're hyper focused and stuff like that. But obviously it sounds like more likely than not, he's going to spend his life with you guys. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe there's some level of independence that you guys think. What are your thoughts for future plans for him?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, I work with a company called My Possibilities that's here locally, and one of their core beliefs is to try to help adults with intellectual disabilities find meaning and purpose in life. And I would love for him to have something, a vocation, connections outside of just the family. And so we were constantly thinking about that. I think we had very low confidence that could have happened prior to this diet change, to be honest with you. I wasn't sure that was really feasible. I believe now that with the progress he's making and continued progress, who knows where he can go. Do I think he'll ever be able to be independent because he won't be able to necessarily pick up the phone if there's an emergency or do some things? That's not going to change, but his tolerance or ability to be able to do a multitude of different things, I think it is still, we don't know where that's going to lead. So absolutely, we hope for some of that. I fully expect at some point, maybe there'll be a business that we end up purchasing where he can be a part of that, stocking, do some things, maybe handle some of the book stuff. I said, it's not the intellect, it's just his ability to apply it and find something where he enjoys and gets some meaning out of it. So we're still trying to find out what that is, but we have more hope than we've ever had.
I would also just add that while Wyatt has also been able to hang out with us more, and sometimes we will try to engage, hey, do you want to do something? Do you want to go outside? And he has said, it feels so good to have a calm brain, to not be constantly on the edge of that. He just doesn't want to add more stimulation. It feels really good to relax a little bit. He has a lot of years where he was not a relaxed guy at all. Yeah. So he may just be enjoying this little season and feel more and more ability to take something on. I feel very hopeful that this will continue. I'm very optimistic.
A lot of autistic kids, particularly if they have other comorbidities, ADHD and things like that, are on medications. Was he on medications? Is he on medications? He
is. We also went to the psychiatrist this week, and I had to be kind but firm that I really wanted to try backing off of some of the medication. And I told her about the diet, and she was like, I don't know, she was not believing it or something, and even wanted to add to the medicine, but we prevailed. And now he's taking 25% less He may not always need the support of the medicine, but we don't know. They wanted him on medication almost immediately. And he's been on a lot of years. And since it's gone so well, I think, who knows, maybe his brain and mitochondria and all that's happening, maybe he's not going to need all that support.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. You mentioned schools kind of and on board with diet. How does that work? Do you guys cook? Do you bring them? Do you send them a lunch, or do they? I can imagine the cafeteria is not serving beef and beef fat. I mean,
No, Matt is our chef every week. He cooks the food, neither rain nor sleep nor dark of night keeps him, and it is a ton. And Wyatt now helps cutting it up. And every morning he will heat up his breakfast and pack his lunch. He takes it with him and they know the deal. But he ate the same lunch before anyway, even when it was carbs and PB&Js and chips and breads. So he never had tons of flexibility, but now it's just changed. And I was glad that they didn't say, we're troubled by this, only have, where are his fruits and vegetables? So I was really glad that they didn't do that.
They really didn't lean into, when we sent him some videos of him communicating with us, they were very hesitant. Even though it's true, like of his communication ability to answer things, they have a hard time changing their long-held beliefs and things. And basically the prevailing thought is if you're low verbal, you're low intellect. And to get them to accept some of the differences there has been challenging. Whereas the first time Holly took him to see the eye doctor, he was able to show him through the letterboard why it communicated right there in front of him. And he's treated him like he talks to him just like we're talking. Mm-hmm. But other folks try to talk down to him or like he's impaired. It's very frustrating, especially if you're someone with Wyatt's intellect, that people constantly underestimate you. And if you're doing tasks that are far beneath you, like sorting colors and coins, it's a real challenge with the school system to understand and embrace and think differently than maybe what they've done historically.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got to be obviously the homeschooling because you know what he's capable of or what he's able to comprehend. And if school's, you're a teenager and here we are having you separate the yellow from the blue. Okay. I got that. But it would be frustrating. And a lot of kids, when they're under challenged, the behavior just deteriorates because we hear that with really bright kids. If they feel like they're bored, then they end up with these behavioral type of things. So Wyatt's in school today, I assume. Is that, I don't know.
He happens to be off because it's Good Friday.
Oh, that's right. That is. Yeah, that's right. Keep it Good Friday. I forgot about that. And how does his sleep? Was he having sleep issues before, or how does he do with that?
Sleeps better than ever. He said his synesthesia is way less. He said the sensory input disorder is just better than it's ever been. And I guess I did want to stress, it hasn't always been linear. Like we said, he got off track trying some carbs from here and there. We've had times where you just plateaued for a while and then he just will make a leap. It's very zigzag. It's not a smooth curve along the way. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, one of the challenges he have compulsions, like they want to have a certain number of blankets on top of his bed. And there's probably a weight element to that too, yes. But it would make him very hot. And so he felt compelled to keep all those on there and in the exact same order. Yes. He's been able to break free of some of that stuff. And part of the reason he's sleeping better is because he doesn't have to have those same 6 blankets on top of his bed in the same order every night. And so the temperature is much better, which means, of course, you're going to sleep better. And there's other little examples like that. And I think he's able to, his mind is calm enough that he can make some better decisions for himself, or he's willing to push himself away from some of the OCD elements that really kind of locked him in before. Yeah,
it's interesting because a lot of autistic children or adults, they have very particular routines. They like it the same way every time. They take comfort in routine. And then like you said, a fire alarm or something happens out of the routine or you don't have this thing that they like. And it's just like, it's a problem. It's a real problem. And so I've definitely experienced that with my own guy. He's in a public school. Has he had trouble with people picking on him, or has he got some friends, or how has he interacted with the rest of his students?
When you cannot communicate, that's certainly going to limit relationships, but I think his affect can be friendly enough. And the kids, are around special needs children much more than we were. Like in the 80s, we didn't even see them. They weren't in school with us. But he, again, only through this diet, we've attended some birthday parties of kids in his class. We've been a pool party, some different stuff, again, that would have been a no-go. We didn't even ask. It was out. He could not do it. And he's been able to do more. I think the door is open. Who knows how much further he might go. Even if he doesn't go any further, how can we be upset? Everything that is going so well for him, he is so much happier on the inside. This is just an incredible outcome.
Yeah,
his friends were mostly through his sister. Like when she'd have people over, he would kind of be on the periphery, and they were very nice to him. That was a core tenet for her and our friends. And that was probably his primary means of engaging others, and his sister is his friend, and they would do some things. And occasionally we tried some other special needs, like parents that we would know they have, and try to connect them up a couple of times. That never really hit off. Again, because he can only communicate on the letterboard. Right now, and it's just with Holly. He could do some limited things with me, but really applying that to other areas, other times, other people is very challenging. That's the next stage we're hoping to get to, is for him to be able to apply that more generally.
Yeah, that would be, that would open up a lot of things to him. Just because there's a question about eggs and stuff like that, iodine in eggs. What is his diet like? What is his diet day to day?
The eggs never took off. Matt and I love eggs. Neither of our kids love eggs. And Wyatt's so bad and they taste terrible. So you got to have a thick skin when he tells you how he feels. But he eats a lot of beef. And in fact, hot dogs are the last thing that he said, I'm ready to start weaning off of those. He tried shrimp recently and he said that was not bad. And he was willing to try that again. I feel like there was one more, something else. Maybe it was ground beef. It was just something different than he has had before.
But it's steak.
Steak.
It's blank steak. I've tried all the different cuts you can possibly go with and trying to find the best combination value, because we buy a lot of meat when we go to Costco.
Yeah. And the one thing I really appreciate they're just blunt honesty. They don't sugarcoat it. I'm like, hey, how'd you like that food? I'll give it a 7. And that's pretty high praise from my son. I'm like, oh, good. Saxon gave me, his name's Saxon. Saxon gave me a 7 today. So I'm pretty happy about that. But it is, they are honest to a fault. It's kind of, there's no sugarcoating, which is great. It's fun and refreshing in a way to see, but sometimes it's kind of, wow, pretty interesting what they do. Since you've discovered this over the last yourself over a couple of years with Wyatt now for a year, have you been in contact with other people with either autism or families with autistic children, interacted with them and found similar stories or trying to share this with anybody else?
Not really. In fact, I thought I might check out your Facebook group. So many of the parents, I think, like before we understood what was going on with Wyatt, we thought if the Wiggles videos seem like they're bringing him a little bit of peace, giving him a break, he's not upset in the moment, let's just let him have it. And I think that the parents maybe think that too. If their child eats a bag of M&Ms and they're like, don't rock the boat. He seems happy. He likes to color, or I don't know. It just seems like it's hard. I have not noticed a lot of openness.
We went to the book in the local place here, and when you're on, we have a child on the spectrum, you recognize another one like pretty quickly. You could see some of the markers, and she volunteered and said that. And she works, she owns some businesses, but she owns that bookshop amongst others. And so we told her about this experience, and she was very interested in hearing more. They restricted some of his diet, but even not to that extent. And so we're happy to talk about it, especially because we feel like, gosh, I wish someone would have shared this with us earlier. So we don't want to withhold that. That's part of the reason we think this podcast and there's an avenue where we can help others that are in similar situations. Gosh, we want to be seen doing that and at least letting know what our experience is and then making their own decision. Yeah,
it truly is amazing. And because you had mentioned there's a lot more kids with special needs these days, it seems. I think it's 1 in 38 males now are diagnosed with autism. It's like, what the hell is going on? Why, is it something in the environment? Is it nutrition? Is it something? Who knows? You can't, because we don't know, it's hard to say, but it's clearly becoming more prevalent. And this can be life altering in a very good way for many people. And you guys probably are aware, just like I am, there's people that are saying, we need to stop eating meat to save the environment, or you need to go vegan to save, and maybe in Texas is probably one of the last places it would happen, but there's places around the world. Like if you go to, say, Edinburgh, Scotland, they've banned meat from all school systems. The capital of Scotland has said no more meat in the school systems. None. Zero. I don't know if you can bring your own food in or not, but they're not going to provide it. And so you're just wondering, what happened? You can think about what if they said maybe 10 years from now, they're going to say, that's nice and all, but we're going to ration you guys to one steak a week or something like that. How would that impact you guys as a family? How would it impact Wyatt? You think about that. And do you share any concern about that?
Yeah, sorry, apologize. I was meeting us just to tell her I have to run to jump on a business call.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to part, but she'll be able to stay here. Thank you for having us on and for the opportunity to be here today. Really enjoyed it and appreciate the audience.
Sure. And I've got to leave in a minute or two too. So sorry.
That's okay. All right. Thank y'all.
I think I do like so many parents where if anybody had to stop the diet first, it would be me. I would let Wyatt have as much. If they start limiting us, my goodness, I pray that it's not going to be like that. I think that we got to vote and call your congressman and all that. It's shocking how that attitude is taking over.
Yeah.
And of course, we couldn't disagree more.
Yeah.
As I say, it is noticeable, generous, measurable changes with him. I just don't see how it can be denied other than I've heard some people say because of monetization. There's not enough, there's no big money. It's not a drug. Yeah. And that's why it's taking over like this.
Right. If it were a drug, it would be $1 trillion drug. I mean,
yes.
It really is. Anyway, Holly, like I said, I have to go. Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful story and give my best to Wyatt. And thank you guys. And hopefully this reaches, people that are maybe in a similar situation and it can give them the courage to try it. And I know it's tough making these dietary changes to these kids because you know how particular they are and you don't want to deal with the screaming and the emotional heartache that goes with that. But gosh, it seems like it's so worth it. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
All right, guys, we'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm going to do my meeting tomorrow. Then I got to hop on a plane to go to Portugal. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Take care. Thanks, Holly. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.